success stories of young people, in particular our Black and Hispanic communities. Unfortunately, many of those that are mentioned often have a negative slant or watered down version of a great accomplishment. For example, I was looking at Serena Williams, and I think that she is one of the most outstanding athletes I have ever seen, male and female, to do what she does, to come back, even when she's down, to be able to come back. Have y'all been watching it? Have you been watching her? To come back, and she has gone down in history, and I believe that she's going to go even further than that. She's going to set the record. But what I notice is that she constantly faces negative or hateful comments by fans, media, and others. So we know that everyone's not doing wrong, but then at the same time, those that are doing right, sometimes we don't even recognize their accomplishments. But I'm also grieved in my spirit when reflecting upon the many funerals of young people I have personally officiated over down through the years, where lives are cut short, some are hanging with the wrong people, others were caught doing the wrong thing, and some others committed suicide due to the pressures of life. I tell you, our children need the Lord, and the devil is after our children. I'm going to say that again. The devil is after our children. He'll do whatever it takes to try to snuff out their life, to discourage them emotionally and mentally at a young age. And of course, once you get young people that are off course, then later on, if they grow up, if there's never any healing, if there's never any correction, what kind of a world or society are we expecting to have? And when you consider the large number of young people that run away from home, the high teenage pregnancy rates, those that have low educational levels, those that are raped, those that are deceived, those that are rejected, abused, neglected, killed by a parent or their mother's ex or former boyfriend, we should all be in this church walking around concerned, seriously, about our young people. We should be concerned about everybody, but in particular, we're looking at something in our passage, which is why I'm raising this issue about being concerned, and that is the devil is after our children. Our main passage in Mark chapter 9, verses 17 through 24, that's the main passage. It's better appreciated, as I shared last week, when we examine what happens prior to Jesus healing and delivering a father's demonized, deaf, and dumb son. I'm going to go over the points that I mentioned last week and add a few things in there because we didn't put on the screen last week, did we? No, you remember that, okay. So I told you this week we're going to give you the points from last week. Take notes, and then also take notes for today because there are going to be some points that are not going to be on the screen again this Sunday. I want to see if you're paying attention. So in Mark chapter 9, we talked about some lessons on spiritual maturity from the transfiguration, because before Jesus has to help this father out, because this father has a problem. His son is acting crazy. He's demonized. He has all of these convulsions. He's foaming at the mouth. And so this man, he brings the son to the disciples first, and they could not help the father out. And then Jesus comes back with the disciples, and then he takes over. But before we can even deal with that, I found it so very interesting to look at what happens prior to that. If you look at Mark chapter 9, verse 2, it says, "And after 6 days, Jesus taketh with him Peter, James, and John, and leadeth them up into an high mountain apart by themselves, and he was transfigured before them." So, of course, I'm not going to go through everything, but I'm going to give you the points. The first point is elevation often means separation. Elevation often means separation. Say that with me. We said last week, I'll say it again for those of you who weren't here. How many disciples are there that are usually with Jesus? 12. There are 12 disciples, and Jesus, what he does is he takes, come on, deacon, come on, deacon. He takes, I need two more deacons. Two more deacons. Let us not all jump at once. We need two more deacons. There are 12 altogether, but when he goes up, he takes 3. Peter, James, and John. So how many are left, class? 9. Notice they go up. They go up from the valley, if you will, up to the mountain. Jesus brings 3 disciples with him of the 12 up into a mountain. Elevation means what? That means that they're 9 down at the valley. He brings 3 with him. There's a reason why he brought the 3. You all may be seated. Thank you so very much. Y'all did a great job. Let's give them a hand. I think it's important. The reason why I brought them up is because when you actually physically see people moving up, you can better see it. You can better understand it. But you do know that God still moves people up without bringing them up to a mountain. He can elevate people. He can promote people. Just like Dr. Lewis, right? You got promoted, didn't you? You like that, don't you? Now, there are a lot of people that could have been in your position, but God, for some reason, he saw what was in you and he elevated you. Amen? So elevation means separation. And what I said last week, and I'll say it again, everyone with you is not necessarily for you. And Jesus knew who he could bring with him. So let me just look at this second verse again. There's some more meat in here. The disciples did not look back, reach back, or attempt to go back. Notice who leads them? Jesus. He brings them up. That's very important because there are seasons where God specifically wants to do a special work just with you. You can't bring everybody with you. Some people are not ready to go with you. Some people don't want to go with you. And some people don't need to go with you. So you take those 3. He brought the 3 with them. Elevation often means separation, and the disciples, they didn't look back. They didn't raise any questions. Oh, I got my meat in the oven. I got to go. No, they didn't do anything about that. They didn't say that. They followed Jesus. And that's another thing. If you look at that verse, it says, Peter, James, and John, and he leadeth them up into a high mountain. I got stuck on that because notice Jesus led them up. I think that's important because they didn't try to elevate themselves as many people do. Many people try to go up themselves. See, when you go up by yourself and the Lord is not leading you up, there's a great big fall you might experience. So Jesus leads them up and they go right along with them. God knows who's ready and he knows who's not ready. And one of the tragedies that we see today, so many people are elevated, but they're doing it on their own. See, if you don't let the Lord lead you or bring you or elevate you or promote you and you start promoting yourself, that's when there's a danger of pride getting in the way. And we do know that pride comes before a fall. So elevation often means what? Separation. We also said, number 2, elevation brings impartation. Elevation brings impartation because they went up. And when the disciples, these 3, Peter, James, and John, went up, they were able to receive so much that the others did not receive. They were able to see the transfiguration. They saw Jesus speaking with who? Moses and Elias or Elijah. If you look in verse 3 and 4, it says, and his raiment became shining, exceeding white as snow, so as no fuller on earth can white them. And there appeared unto them Elias with Moses, and they were talking with Jesus. That's something else. Brothers and sisters, sometimes God will elevate you to show you something that he has not shown anyone else. He will take you higher. Tell somebody, God will take you higher. And he will show you some things. So he said elevation often means separation. Elevation brings impartation, and elevation reveals our level of spiritual maturity. It shows how we conduct ourselves during a season of blessing. You do know that everyone cannot handle blessings. Some people don't. I remember years ago there was a book called Can You Stand to Be Blessed? Some people don't know how to handle success. They let it go to their head. Just because God blesses you and elevates you and you see his glory or you see something, it doesn't mean that you're all that. The thing is, you should still give God the glory. Peter, James, and John, there's a reason why the Lord, as I said last week, Jesus did not bring Judas up there on the mountain because he knew what was in Judas's heart. There's some people you can't bring with you because elevation reveals our level of spiritual maturity. Do we become arrogant or prideful when God shares something special with us? We should not. Number 4, elevation is also preparation. Jesus was preparing the disciples, Peter, James, and John, preparing them for the crucifixion and preparing them for the resurrection because he told them, listen, I don't want you to say anything about this yet until after the resurrection. So this is what he did. It reveals the level of spiritual maturity, and also elevation is also preparation for the next assignment. Trust me, when God brings you up and you receive special blessings, don't think that it's just for that moment only. It's to help you move forward into other things of life. Has anyone been blessed before by God? How many of you gone through a difficult period in life? How many of you been blessed again? So it's almost like peaks and valleys. You get blessed, then you go back down, then all of a sudden you go back. But you see, every time you go down, the idea is to remember, God did bring me up before. He did bless me before. So you go down and you know that it's not going to be like this always. Tell somebody the sun will shine again. It's not going to be like that always. If you look at verse 7, I didn't really mention this last week, but it got to me as I was looking at it. It says, and there was a cloud that overshadowed them, and a voice came out of the cloud saying, this is my beloved son, hear him. Now, I don't know about you, but if I was on that mountain, I'm sure I would have been frightened to death. First of all, to see Jesus communicating with two people who are already dead. Now, you turn around and you're going to hear a voice coming from heaven, and it's God saying, it's almost like you're coming into the Shekinah glory, and you hear a voice saying, this is my beloved son, hear ye him. If I had to throw something else out here, it would be, there is confirmation in your elevation. There is confirmation in your elevation. When you hear God's voice, do not expect it to sound like the actor James Earl Jones. I am God. No, that's it. It may not sound like that. But trust me, God knows how to get your attention, and you will know when God's speaking to you. He's spoken primarily through his word, but God speaks through people. He speaks through experiences. He knows how to get your attention. Tell somebody next to you, God knows how to speak to you. Look at verse 9. It says, and as they came down from the mountain, he charged them that they should tell no man what things they had seen till the Son of Man were risen from the dead. And verse 10 says, and they kept that saying with themselves. If I had to say a couple of things about verse 9, one thing is, at some point you must come down. At some point, you must come down. It's dangerous to think you will live on top all the time. I didn't say love on top, Beyonce fans. I didn't say that. I didn't say love. I said live on top. Therefore, the Bible says, let him that thinketh he standeth take heed lest he fall. It's better to come down with the Lord than have to be brought down, sat down, or removed. Did y'all hear that? At some point, you must come down. Peter, James, and John came down with Jesus. It's better that you come down with the Lord when he brings you back down into the valley than the Lord have to sit you down, remove you totally. You don't want that. But as the Lord elevates, he also knows how to bring you down in the valley. It's almost like sometimes we used to go on retreats. It's something about going away on retreats. Whether you're in the business world, you go away for a retreat, or in the church, you go away for a retreat. Seems like you can think better. Everybody gets along. Everybody's smiling. But then when you get back to the office, you get back to the church. So you can't stay on the mountain all the time. At some point, you got to come down. Tell somebody you got to come down. And I said this last week, but I think it's important to hear this. Notice Jesus charged them not to tell what they saw until the Son of Man were risen from the dead. See, Jesus knew that if he brought some of them up there with him, they couldn't keep their mouths shut. Because some people have loose lips. Loose lips sink. Anyway, it's important that you know how to keep things confidential. When God speaks to you, he shows you something, you can't say it all the time because everyone can't handle what it is that God is doing in your... Am I in the right place today? Everyone can't handle your blessing. Everyone can't handle what God is doing because, some people get jealous. See, Jesus knew that if Peter, James, and John went down and said, ooh, we were with Jesus, we saw Elijah, somebody would holler out, oh, look at them. They think they all that now. They so deep. Somebody would get jealous, envious. Then you have a whole bunch of confusion on this team. The Lord knew what was best. So y'all with me? All right. We just have a few more things we'll share with you. We'll move forward today. For today, look at verses 17 and 18. And then we'll wrap this up. And one of the multitude answered and said, Master, I have brought unto thee my son, which hath a dumb spirit. And wheresoever he taketh him, he teareth him, and he foameth and gnasheth with his teeth, and pineth away. And I spake to thy disciples that they should cast him out, and they could not. Well, there are three things I'll share with you, and a few other points, but the thing is, what stands out about this father's concern for his child? What stands out about this father's concern for this child? Well, when I read that verse, and even just reading a few other verses where the disciples were questioned by the scribes, in verse 14, it says, when he came to his disciples, so now Peter, James, and John, they come down with Jesus. They come back. They're with the other 9. But when he came to his disciples, he saw a great multitude about them and the scribes questioning with them. And straightway all the people, when they beheld him, were greatly amazed, and running to him, saluted him. And he asked the scribes, what questioned ye with them? And that's when one of the multitude answered and said, Master, I have brought unto thee my son, which hath a what? A dumb spirit. One of the things that stood out for me, and there's several others, but it says, to me it says, he reverenced Jesus. He reverenced Jesus. Can you say that? He reverenced Jesus. This father, he came, and notice what he says. He says, Master. He didn't come and say, yo. He addressed him for who he was. He saw him as a leader. He saw him as the great teacher above teachers. He said what? Master. Can you say master with me? He says, Master. Now, I know some of you here, you're saying, well, what's so big about that? When you get in enough trouble, when you have enough issues in your life, you will know how to fall on your knees. And you will know how to speak nice and loud and clear. And you'll say, Lord, have mercy on me. I don't know if you've ever had to cry out to Jesus like that, but I encourage you to keep living. He says, Master. Now keep in mind, he has some problems. His problem is dealing with his who? His son. He reverenced Jesus. He respects Jesus by calling him Master. Thank God for a father that knows how to reverence Jesus. Thank God for a father that knows how to call him Master. Number 2, he recognized that his child had serious issues. That's what it says in the text. Jesus asked what was going on. He comes away and he says, I have brought unto thee my son, which hath a dumb spirit. And wheresoever he taketh him, he teareth him, and he foameth and gnasheth with teeth, and pineth away. So he recognized that his child had serious issues. He reverenced the Lord Jesus, and then also he recognized